Okay, here we go on a fine Wednesday afternoon. Here's my play-in music, ready or not. You are listening to KPCA LP, Petaluma, California, at 103.3 FM and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. And this is the Midnight Skeptic. The views of the Midnight Skeptic are not, repeat, not necessarily the views of KPCA or any of its affiliates. Okay, here we go. I just noticed a rather strange coloration down here in my throat. It's just an odd shadow, I think. It's not a wound or anything, so all of my thousands and thousands of viewers on YouTube can rest assured I'm fine and I'm over the cold or flu or whatever it is I had. I just slept a little longer, drank more fluids, and took it easy. My voice is just a little bit crackly today, but I have my trusty grape juice. Okay, this is the Midnight Skeptic Show number 107. It'll be broadcast out to the world on Sunday the 12th at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which I call Petaluma time. And all you have to do worldwide, everybody, is kpca.fm. Anchor, the people that collect podcasts and broadcasts like this one, disseminates it through a number of sites all around the world. So I appreciate them for that. But you don't have to do www. Any of that stuff, just kpca.fm. And today that I'm recording the show, it's Wednesday the 8th of February. And I'm going to remind you all who may not, for whatever reason, have listened to this show before or watched this show on YouTube, that the Midnight Skeptic is proudly woke. And as we speak, I'm having some t-shirts made up to that effect. And it'll say, if everything comes out right, The Midnight Skeptic, and then YouTube, and then a little ampersand and sign, kpca.fm. And what was the other one? Oh, locally, if you actually listen to this on your AM/FM radio, we are at FM 103.3 FM. Okay. And listen to, if you tune in on your FM's radio to KPCA 103.3 FM, please give a listen to the Project Censored show. It's going on 3 o'clock right now, so they're over for today, but they go from 1 to 2. And Mickey Huff has a lot of interesting guests on his show, and I've said before, and I'll say it again, he is almost as lefty as I am politically. Okay. And any listeners or watchers out there that want to send hate mail or death threats or, dare I say, even constructive criticism, please send it to the Midnight Skeptic, the Midnight Skeptic at gmail.com. It's all lowercase. It's all one smushed together word. Okay. And my catchphrase that I came up with about 2 months ago, I am trying in my own small way to rid this country of GOP MAGA-head Republicans, one broadcast at a time. Okay, shout outs. And happy birthday to KPCA LP 103.3 FM 6 years ago at noon on February 2nd, which was Groundhog Day that day, in 2017. KPCA began streaming the Midnight Skeptic, and then that was their first day of operation as a radio station. But they began streaming the Midnight Skeptic that Tuesday night at 6 o'clock for an hour. I used to be on Tuesdays, and then I had cards printed up with my picture on it sitting at the KPCA radio studio with all these buttons and whistles that I knew nothing about. Thank goodness for my audio engineer, Dennis, who showed me how to operate it. And there's really only about 5 or 6 that you really need to work. The others, I don't know what they're for, but I got through it, and the rest is history. And then a couple of years later, KPCA came up with the ability to receive electronically transmitted shows from like your home, like this, my home, and then rebroadcast it. So I didn't have to go into the radio station anymore to do this. And then about a half a year, I forget exactly when, but my son said, "Hey, Dad, why don't you put this up on YouTube?" Well, I had no idea how to do that, but he does. So he set up initially a little broadcast booth out in our garage with a desk and a microphone. And he actually came up with a teleprompter for the first couple of YouTube shows. That didn't work out too well because it goes at a certain speed. I sound like I'm just reading, and it was not good. Okay, so we migrated back into the house. This is the room where I do my tutoring. I still have about 3 students that I work with, all of them from Casa Grande High School, which is a very good school, about 6-7 blocks down the street. So had to get a camera. I'm pointing right at this camera on top of the computer. He showed me how to go to YouTube, download it, and send it into YouTube. And so, yeah, here I am. So I'm on YouTube. I'm worldwide on kpca.fm. And locally, I think our actual FM signal doesn't get over to Katati, or it may get to Sebastopol, certainly doesn't get over to Sonoma. So anyway, locally, 103.3 FM. So enjoy. It remained on Tuesday for a while. The station made a decision to move me to 9 to 10 o'clock on Sundays, which is where I am now. Okay. Oh, I'm certainly off my notes here, although I wrote all this stuff down. The rest, as they say, is history. Rant on, Midnight Skeptic. Okay, now go to projectcensored.org. Order yourselves the signed copy of the book, The State of the Free Press 2023. It's out now and has been for 4 or 5 weeks anyway. And it's written by Mickey Huff. and Andy Lee Roth. Okay, and if you call in soon, they'll send you a signed copy. I think Mickey still remembers how to sign his name. Anyway, it's well worth it. Their byline is the news that didn't make the news. All right, get yourself a copy. Okay, shout outs. Locally, Tom Gaffey at the Phoenix, Nariman, Keith and Cody, Tom and Nancy, Kevin and Lori, and Katati, Dave and Rosie up in Sacramento, Sebastopol, Rich and Kathy Berger, down in Tiburon, Dennis and Megan, San Francisco, Yvonne Santos. All of these people tune in now and then, not regularly. I don't even know if I have any regular listeners. Anyway, people have busy lives. Okay. Oh, where am I? I'm off my notes. Pacifica, Stan and Kathy, L.A. Jackie, and her two daughters, Melanie and Samantha, they tune in occasionally. Over to Arizona, my brother Brandon and his wife Vicky, and then their daughter Andrea, who's a nurse there. Please, please, please take care of yourselves, Andrea. Wear your PPE. And then her husband Tim and their three little kids. Karina Hilliard, the snake lady in Patagonia, Arizona. Arkansas, Shannon Reed, Florida. Nelson and Alice and Amelia Beamer. North Carolina, in the Raleigh-Durham area, Dr. Dave Rubin, my favorite lung doctor. And up to Long Island, Geraldine Goldfinger. And then, last but not least, all the Sonora crowd. Robert and Colleen, Bob and Sandy, Brad and Martha, who is also a nurse, a CNA. Wear your PPE. And, okay, I don't have these written down. Darrell, Judy, Leonidas, Lynn Quayle, Kathy Francis, and then down to Mexico City, Rosamalia Lopez Negrete, and then John Gleason up in Twain Hart, and his two daughters, who one of them's down south, one of them's in Minnesota, but occasionally they listen in, and I will certainly be sending them all a t-shirt as soon as they all get printed up. I don't know when that'll be. I'm in no hurry about it. Okay, and kind of good news on a personal note. Kaiser Hospital, they've been taking care of me because I have an underlying blood condition that makes me short of breath. And you guys out there could hear this for the last two shows. I was kind of coughing and wheezing and, short of breath. And I was in the hospital for about 3 days back in the early part of January. And I got a call from the finance department of Kaiser down in Santa Fe. And I had totally forgotten I had done this, but about 3 years ago, this is before the COVID shutdown, I had filled out a form for financial aid because I was in the hospital then for a couple of days for another thing I won't go into. And then the finance lady was going through her records, and she had noticed that I was admitted to the hospital. Well, she called me up and said, you're still eligible for wiping out all my co-payments. Whoa, okay, I didn't expect that, but I'll take it. I've always been a fan of Kaiser. My entire working life, since the Navy and college, which goes back way ways, I've been with Kaiser. And I have nothing bad to say about them. Once in a while, it takes a bit long to get something done or see a doctor that you're supposed to see, but I have really no gripes. Okay, that's the good news. Okay, onward to my weekly rant. Okay, bad news, horrible news, stupid news. The orange sociopathic bloat bag, and by now you all know who I mean by that. I will not say the previous guy's name ever again. And when his picture comes up on the TV, I always fast forward through it. I don't want to hear him. I don't want to see him. He's a nightmare that I just want to get past. And hopefully this country and the Republican Party, which I am still registered as, will get past him with a small h. Okay, where am I? The orange sociopathic bloat bag has called for, can you believe this? The public and parents to elect school principals. By students' parents, he said in a campaign video on Thursday, the 2nd of this month, February. And, quote, we need more, quote unquote, patriotic teachers. And patriotic and patriotism and patriot is just a word that's been stolen / co-opted by MAGA heads as a marketing word to be used to gin up the base. Okay. Okay. If Republicans had their way, we would be closer and closer to a Nazi regime where patriotic Germans all wear the same uniform and hail Trump. And there were a few people that actually did that. Okay. More bad news. I'm sorry, but I've promised my listeners and watchers out there that I will start every show with good news. Well, I tried to give you some good news, although that wasn't actually in my notes. Okay, bad news. Chaya Rachik. Okay, this is her name. Capital Chaya Rachik, capital Rachik. She is the founder of Libs of TikTok, which is a totally anti-LGBTQ Twitter account. And she has 1.3 million followers on this. She's a former real estate agent. I guess she didn't exercise her sales skills well enough. Okay. On December 27th of 2022, that's 2 months ago, I guess, was revealed on Fox News, her identity. She'd been just an anonymous Twitterer until she came on Fox News, Tucker Carlson show. And she created Libs of TikTok in April of 2021 in Brooklyn. I guess that's her hometown. And she started by just reposting cherry-picked tapes that were posted by LGBTQ community people. And of course, she picked out the worst ones that she could find. So, I don't know. Anybody that knows Chaya Rachik, just go slap her on the cheek for me, would you please? The harder the better. All right. Horrible, creepy Christian propaganda news. Have I said before that I am anti all religions, especially creepy Christians, especially creepy Southern Baptist Christians? Okay, I don't know if these guys are Southern Baptists or not, but they're creepy. Okay, and I got this from Raw Story, RAWSTORY, on the 3rd of February. Hobby Lobby founder David Green is behind the quote-unquote He Gets Us movie ads that are being aired during the NFL playoff games and will be aired during the Super Bowl. This guy is rich, the owner of Hobby Lobby. He is spending $3 billion, with a B, to quote unquote rebrand Jesus, that he understands the human condition. Did David Green go back in time and meet Jesus? Rhetorical question. Okay. Rebrand Jesus, that he understands the human condition, highly doubtful. That he was a refugee, well, that's true. If there was a historical Jesus, he was a refugee. And that he confronted racism with love. Well, I hope he did. He should have if he didn't. Okay, now, this is a project of the Servant Foundation, doing business as the signatory. Okay, I'll spell that out for you in case you want to Google it. Capital Sigratoury. I have no idea what that means. It sounds like some kind of a religious term to me. But it's a Kansas, the state of Kansas, non-profit. In other words, a Christian money-making scam, really. Okay. Finally, a bit of good news here. Happiness lessons. Okay, I rarely recommend viewing a TED Talk on your internet, but this one, I stumbled upon it, and I highly recommend that you watch this. It's not that long, and it's by Dr. Robert Waldinger. He's a Harvard psychiatrist. He's in his early 70s, and he authored this book called The Good Life. And it talks about this 75-year-long Harvard study of adult development and happiness. He didn't start the study. I mean, there have been a number of leaders of this 75-year study. And they picked out a number of 9, 10, 11-year-old kids 75 years ago and followed them with questionnaires and measurements, blood tests, everything. They just did everything, seeking to find out the secret of happiness. And well, studies like this, I think they started out with, 350 or so. You can hear the actual numbers. But, over the course of 75 years, well, some people die. Some people just don't want to do it anymore. So the way these studies end up being, you end up with 30 or 40 people that are still with the study after 75 years. And within the last 15, 20 years, some of their wives have, insisted that they be studied as well, even though they didn't go back all the way to the beginning of the study 75 years ago. Okay. Studies such as this, sociological or psychological or psychiatric clinical studies, just got guys volunteer. Well, there's an automatic gender bias in these studies. But anyway, they did start studying the women, meaning their wives, fairly recently. Okay, I'm off my notes again. And it was done by Harvard, study of adult development. And I'm urging my thousands of listeners and viewers to watch the TEDx talk by Dr. Waldinger, capital Waldinger. And he did this TED talk on November 30th of 2015 about the 75-year study of adult development. It's great. And in the book, he mentions specifically as a way to calm yourselves, to seek peace of mind and happiness. One of the things he mentioned briefly was petting your cat. I've been telling you guys that for a long time now. I'm thoroughly convinced that, it applies to your dog too, if you have a dog. I don't have a dog. And one thing that is mentioned in the book about religion, religious people are no more or no less happy than non-religious people. So two things that the Midnight Skeptic wholly agrees with. And I say at the end of my show, every show, and most importantly, pet your cats. And my listeners and viewers out there know that I am more than just non-religious. I'm kind of anti-religion. I've said on many shows that all religions are misogynistic and detrimental to the humanness of people here on Earth. Okay, enough of that. Please watch it. And if you think it's good, let me know. themidnightskeptic@gmail.com. Okay, good news. The Chinese spy balloon, which in my opinion is just a big nothing burger, it caused quite a foo-foo in Republican circles. And the idiotic MAGA head response. Okay, Republicans only want to be able to point fingers at Biden and blame him for not reacting more forcefully. Republicans and MAGA heads would say, shoot it down, ask questions later. Three of these Chinese spy balloons, I guess, came over this country during the Trump administration. And, almost unknown, the National Defense Agency, the NSA, knew about them, sort of. But nobody was really informed about it, least of all the orange sociopathic bloat bag. In my notes here, I say 3 at least. Chinese spy balloons came over the U.S. during the administration of the orange sociopathic bloat bag. And Biden, on Wednesday, the balloon was kind of transiting from Wyoming to Kansas, heading east, and he said, shoot it down. This is on Wednesday, when it's safe and appropriate. All right. Well, the Pentagon decided to shoot it down as soon as it got off the east coast of the United States. Near Myrtle Beach is where they figured out it was going out to sea. So they did shoot it down, and now we're collecting all of the spy stuff that was attached to this balloon. And it's like a intelligence treasure trove for us. We're going to analyze it. It's in the FBI laboratories at Quantico, Virginia, as we speak, and they're poring over the equipment. And so, of course, the Republicans just want to play the blame game and point fingers. And okay, anyway. On my Facebook page, Dave Murphy, I announce every week, with my glorious picture there, what I'm going to be talking about on this show. And I think I posted it on Monday and then wrote, a paragraph about what I'm going to be talking about. This show primarily is going to be about the sordid, sewage-infested history of the Republican Party here in the United States. Okay. Whew. And it kind of pains me to say that or say these things about the Republican Party because I am still, mostly out of sheer laziness, a registered Republican. When Nixon, okay, I'm getting a call here, but okay, it's nobody. When Nixon reduced the voting age to 18, well, I went down and registered. And I registered as a Republican. That was, I don't know, the kind of thing. I was not very political back then as compared to right now, where I am uber political, not to mention woke. Okay, now, the main topic of the Midnight Skeptic show tonight, the descent of the Republican Party into hateful religiosity and anti-science beliefs, and being owned by big corporate interests. All right, that's what they are now. And I am still a registered Republican. Okay, here we go. In the 50s and 60s, FDR's, that's Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal coalition, union people, working people, blacks, fell apart. Meaning voters fell away from the Franklin Roosevelt's Democratic Party. Republicans had always been against Social Security and other government social safety net programs that benefited the middle class and lower class. After Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president right after Kennedy, signed the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Southern Democrats rapidly exited the party. These so-called Dixiecrats flocked to the Republican Party. The phrase states' rights, their mantra, meant that the states, meaning the southern states, could determine who could vote, how they could vote, and what requirements there were. It's kind of like the GOP today, who are throwing up all these barriers to people just voting. States' rights was opposed to civil rights. You know, Martin Luther King Jr., which are, I'm talking civil rights, which are the rights of citizens to political and social freedom and equality. Dixiecrats, or sometimes called the Solid South, or sometimes called the Southern Bloc, were racist voters whose essential one issue was preserving white privilege. Before this term privilege even came into its current wide usage, and it is now freaking out the GOP MAGA-head Republicans. Whites don't have privilege. That's CRT. Okay. Strom Thurmond, senator from South Carolina, 1954 to 2003. He made it to 100 years of age before he got out of the Senate. And champion of the filibuster, the real one, where you had to actually get up and speak for hours and hours and hours. He was his favorite tactic for delaying these civil rights bills. Okay, so that was Strom Thurmond. And George Wallace, governor of Alabama for 4 terms and a staunch segregationist. He was another one. Remember him standing in the doorway of University of Alabama to block the entrance of a couple of black students. Okay. Robert Byrd, senator from West Virginia, another long-lived guy. He was an organizer for his local chapter of, you ready for this? The KKK in West Virginia. These guys were the embodiment of 50s, 60s, and 70s racism. Okay, moving ahead in our country's history. I'm concentrating on bashing Republicans here. Ronald Reagan, who was originally a Democrat and head of the Screen Actors Guild, he was a union guy. He switched over to the Republican Party in 1962 during the Kennedy administration. And he said, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party, the party left me." He was a Franklin Delano Roosevelt supporter and tried to get Dwight Eisenhower to run in 1952 as a Democrat. Well, Eisenhower ran in that election, but he was a Republican. And he, meaning Eisenhower, was not an ideological Republican. He was a middle-of-the-road, very pragmatic, unspectacular president. Okay, all right. The party left me, FDR, run as a Democrat, 1952. Okay, Eisenhower was not a Southern-style racist. No, I'm talking about Reagan here. Reagan was not a Southern-style racist, however, but in deciding to run again for president in the 1980 election, he had failed to get the Republican nomination a couple of elections before 1980. But in the 1980 election, he came under the influence of the, far-right moral majority founded by Jerry Falwell and Paul Weyrich, who was the founder of the Heritage Foundation, a radical right-wing think tank. And it was Paul Weyrich, capital W-E-Y-R-I-C-H, who coined the term moral majority. The Reaganomics of his, meaning Reagan's, two terms, emphasized tax reduction on corporations and the wealthy, unrestricted free market activity, as do GOP positions today. Okay, moving along a little further, two terms for Reagan. George H.W. Bush, who was Reagan's vice president, won the 1988 presidential election, championing, you ready for this? Prayer in schools, capital punishment, and gun rights. And he was the one who ran these Willie Horton political racist ads against Dukakis, his Democratic opponent. Dukakis had a program where incarcerated people in Massachusetts could have weekend passes. Well, one of them, Willie Horton, raped a lady. Oh man, that's all the Republicans needed to jump on it and claim that Dukakis had a swinging door in Massachusetts prisons. The ad was totally racist. We should all be afraid of blacks. Paul Weyrich. Okay. George Bush. Okay, racist ad. Okay. All right, cut ahead more. Bill Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush in the 1992 election and served 2 terms presiding over the longest period of peacetime economic expansion in U.S. history. As Yogi Berra once said, you could look it up. If you don't believe the Midnight Skeptic, and I don't know why you wouldn't, but you can go and look it up. He failed, that's Clinton, he failed to get his national health care reform plan passed due to the Republicans controlling Congress. Clinton left office in 2001 with some of the highest approval ratings in American history, in the history of American polling about the presidency, despite the Monica Lewinsky scandal and the attempted impeachment of him by Republicans. Okay. Except for the first couple of years, the GOP controlled Congress. Okay. George Bush, okay, the son of George H.W. Bush, describing himself as a compassionate conservative. There ain't no such thing. The Midnight Skeptic is telling you all out there, there are no real compassionate conservatives. Okay. He won, George Bush, the 2000 election over Al Gore. Remember him, the environmentalist? As a Supreme Court ruling to stop the Florida vote recount, in effect, handed the presidency to George Bush. And Dr. Evil, his running mate, brain freeze time. No, it'll pop into my mind. And one of the things that President Bush went out on the campaign trail, after he won the election, and tried to convince the people that they would be better off if Social Security were privatized. And that's one of the things that Republican MAGA heads want to do today. All right. Okay, here we go. Barack Obama. Where am I? Okay, got plenty of time still. Barack Obama won the 2008 election over John McCain, Republican from Arizona. Do you remember the ex-governor of Alaska who was his running mate? Sarah Palin. She was a proto-MAGA head before there were real MAGA heads. Let's see, Barack Obama. And he immediately worked to fix the global financial crisis with a major pledge, major money stimulus pledge. Now, the economy went into the tank during the last year or year and a half of George Bush's last 4 years. And the world was teetering on the brink of collapse. We had a couple of financial institutions, and I didn't write their names down, that collapsed and just went out of business. Housing prices collapsed. People lost a lot of money, but we needed the stimulus package, although the Republicans were against it. Okay, the big thing is that Obama got passed in his first 2 years, where he had help from Congress because Democrats controlled it, was the Affordable Care Plan, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare. The Republicans thought, and somewhat rightly, that if they called it Obamacare, People would hate it because they don't want no black guy telling us what to do with our health plan. Okay. And in 2009, shortly after Obama was elected, the Tea Party movement came along. And it's a part of the Republican Party, and within the GOP erupted in 2019, mainly against Obamacare and large government, and they wanted lower government spending, but anger over having a black president was their main gripe. And you can't convince me that Tea Party, quote unquote, patriots were not out and out racists. Okay. And I say on my notes, over, so means I got to turn the page. Okay. Now we're cutting ahead again. The orange sociopathic bloat bag now is ready to rip off a national scab, and MAGA racists ooze out of the wound in 2008 during Barack Obama's presidential campaign. Do you remember birtherism? It took hold in the GOP and held on despite Obama's release of his long-form birth certificate and contemporaneous birth announcements in Hawaii newspapers. A May 2011, that's 11 years ago, I guess, a May 2011 poll by the Gallup poll company found that 13% of all American adults and 1/4 of Republicans doubted Obama's birth. And if he wasn't born in this country, then he was not eligible to be elected president, which would be fine with them. The orange sociopathic bloat bag went on all sorts of talk shows and claiming that he sent his personal private detectives over to Hawaii to check records and kept saying things like, "You wouldn't believe what they found." Well, none of these talk show hosts called him on that and said, "Well, tell us what they found." He was not going to do it. In fact, I think he probably lied about sending people over to Hawaii to check on Obama's legitimate birth. Okay. Birtherism took hold in the GOP and held on despite Obama's release of his long-form birth certificate and blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm through riffing on that. Okay, cut now to British TV producer Mark Burnett, capital Burnett, TV producer. He came up with the idea for a reality show called The Apprentice on NBC here in the U.S. It first aired in 2004, and it ran for 14 years. It ran, okay, my math is off. Started in 2004, and it ran till 2015. That's 11 years, but, you know, the article I was reading said 14 years. Okay, doesn't matter. More than a decade. Burnett approached the orange sociopathic bloat bag in 2003 about a new, quote-unquote, reality show with the orange sociopathic bloat bag as businessman/host. Businessman host to ultimately select the best candidate out of two teams to be the apprentice. The orange sociopathic bloat bag initially said that, and this is a quote, reality TV was for the bottom feeders of society. But the show became so popular that I'm going to have to say this, that the Trump name and brand became associated in GOP minds with quote unquote success of his resorts, his properties, his golf courses, his products. Do you remember steaks? Yeah. And charities. Okay. He decided in 2015 to come down the golden escalator with his rent-a-wife right behind him to announce his run for the president. And this happened on June 16th, 2015. Do you all remember that happening? He was fired by NBC for his racist speech on that day, announcing his Republican candidacy. Do you remember, they don't send us their best people? There's crime, they're rapists, they're drug people. I got a sip. Grape juice. Okay, I lost my place on my notes. Okay, anyway, NBC fired him. There was one year recently that Arnold Schwarzenegger took over hosting the show. That just didn't work. And I like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he was the governor of California, and of course a action movie hero. But even though he was a Republican governor, he was quite liberal in his outlook. Okay, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger. The orange sociopathic bloat bag won the GOP nomination despite no GOP politician liking him. He's not a very likable guy. He's a ASSHOLE. He came out right away with his red MAGA hat and began holding rallies for GOP MAGA heads, aggrieved losers who also just wanted to own the libs. That is a recurrent theme. Now, they don't say that in that many words, own the libs. But that is what they want. Anything that's progressive or liberal or might have come from a Democratic candidate or politician, they're against it. Yeah. And they object to the fact that Democrats and progressives claim that these heartland, aggrieved, lower class people vote against their own best interests. I don't care if they don't raise the taxes on corporations and the wealthy. I don't care, as long as we get prayer in schools and Trump will protect us from those trannies and the LGBTQ plus Q people. Okay. And scientists don't know anything. Burning fossil fuels is good for us, I bet. They're trying to fool us. All right. Okay, enough of that rant. Okay. Anti-immigrant speech. He won the GOP nomination. In 2016 election, he won because he won more of the electoral college, which is something that I'll riff on at some future show. That electoral college thing just has to be changed. let's see, and he lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton in 2016 by roughly about 3 million votes. And I've said on other shows, he had help from Russia, who attempted through various means online and through their chat bots to tip the scales toward Trump away from Hillary. Now, there's no way of knowing how many votes were successfully swung to Trump from Hillary, just because potential Hillary voters, through lies and Russian bots, fill their minds with anti-Hillary screeds. There's no way to know exactly, and it's water under the bridge now anyway. Okay, won the GOP nomination, and he won despite Hillary Clinton getting 3 million more votes. He, the orange sociopathic bloat bag, ran again on the Republican ticket in 2020 against Joe Biden, our current president, and lost, something he will never admit. And any Republican who actually says, oh boy, I've really got to speed this up. Despite Hillary Clinton getting 3 million more votes, he ran again in 2020. Biden got 7 million more votes and won the Electoral College 306 to 232. January 6th, 2021, insurrection of the MAGA heads ensued. The courts and tax filings show that the orange sociopathic bloat bag was not wealthy, but it was all smoke and mirrors and debt, and he's not a real good businessman. Now, the Republican Party is in its death throes, I hope. The MAGA wing versus just the everyday crazy wing of the Republican Party. And responsible Republicans in 2019 formed the Lincoln Project to work against the orange sociopathic bloat bag in the 2020 election. And in 2022, Democrats kept a hold of the Senate, but lost a small, tiny majority in the House. And the House of Representatives now is just crazy and uncontrollable. Kevin McSpineless is elected Speaker after 15 different votes. That's all. I've got to play my out music. You have been listening to The Midnight Skeptic on KPCA LP, Petaluma, California. And we're at 103.3 on the FM dial and worldwide at www.kpca.fm. Support community radio at patreon.com/Petaluma Community Access. And remember, think critically, think logically, but live joyously, and most importantly, pet your cats. Okay, this is 59 minutes. KPCA has cut me off about a minute ago, but I'm still on YouTube. But I might as well just say goodbye to all my YouTube watchers as well. So this is the end of the recording.